All right, well, that sounds good. I love what it's all about. We just gotta focus. Welcome. We're gonna have Representative Steve Bratcher and Nancy Tate speak today. And then we're gonna go into a debate with Josh Calloway, and then into a Q&A. So I would like Matt Zneen here to do open prayer. If everybody would stand.
Please join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to fellowship together. We thank you for these leaders that represent us in Frankfurt. We ask your blessings upon them and their families and all who have in attendance today. Please bless us as we leave here. Keep us safe. Keep those that are serving in our military safe as they give us this opportunity to practice democracy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Mary, would you lead us into the pledge and national anthem, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right, thank you guys. Welcome, Representative Steve Bratcher, Nancy Tate, and Josh Calloway. First, I'd like to let you both know that you have about 10 minutes to speak on your campaign, on what's happening in Frankfurt, whatever y'all choose to do. And then after your 10 minutes each, just sit back, hold on. We'll go into the debate with Josh, and then afterwards, we're gonna have an open Q&A with everyone here. And your mic, you might have to turn it on.
First of all, as Bobby said, I'm Representative Nancy Tate, and I sincerely appreciate you all coming out today and appreciate Bobby and everybody that organized this. I'd like to say that typically I'm a lot more dressed up than I am today, but I had an amazing experience this morning. My family and I went over to Dawn's over in Cecilia, and we actually went pheasant hunting this morning. And so, I had to run directly from over there to over here. And so, especially when we're in session and then when we're campaigning, we have to find and fit times in for the family. And so there were 12 of us over there, my family and friends. And yeah, there were 40 people hunting, but as you can tell basically that I'm very supportive of the sportsmen, very supportive of the Second Amendment. And just, I just think that it's amazing for us from a family perspective. My colleagues and I, we've worked really, really hard to support the family. And I don't know, I'm going to just talk a little bit about Josh, especially since he's one of the people that has a primary. And I'm so honored to have the opportunity to serve with him because I don't know if you all heard his speech last year on the floor, where he gave one of the most heart-wrenching, devoted speeches that I've ever heard. So it's an honor for me to speak with, to speak for him and to serve with him. I can tell you that we have an amazing group of representatives for Hardin County, and I hope you all are very pleased. We try really hard to be available, like for example we are today, We fit time in, we try to respond to your calls. When we see you, we want to know who you are. We want you to know who we are and to stop and speak with us. This year there's 30 years, the 30-day sessions, it feels like 30 years. There's 30-day sessions and there's 60-day sessions, and this is the long session whenever we prepare the budget. And I don't know if you all have been following or not, but typically the budget for Kentucky is 16 billion, and then with the federal bypass, it's 30 billion. If you all have seen the budget that the House has put out, it's $124 billion. And so whenever I saw that, I was shocked. I mean, I thought, is this a typo? What have we done differently? And I just want to tell you that one of the things that the Republican Party and my colleagues and I have done is that we have committed to being fiscally responsible. Now, when we say that 124 billion, is that fiscally responsible? And the answer is absolutely. What we've done is that since the Republican Party became the majority in 2017, we've worked really, really, really hard to know where our tax dollars are going. And I like to use the Dave Ramsey approach to work your budget, to know where your money's going, and then to live today like no one else so you can live like no one else. And that's exactly what we've done. We've worked really, really, really hard to take care and make sure that we know where every single penny is going. And one of the things that we did differently is the first year that I was in office, we had the opportunity to go through the budget line by line by line. And while that was overwhelming, one of the things that was very interesting to me was that the people that were helping us with the budget, the staff that were helping us with the budget kept saying, well, this is not an increase. We're not spending more money. This is not an increase from last year. This is not an increase from last year. And I kept going, guys, I don't understand this. I mean, I just kept shaking my head and rubbing my head. And so finally I asked the stupid question. I said, well, what I don't understand is, and let's just use this as an example. So if last year we spent $10 million on this one line item, and this year we're planning to spend $12 million, I can do basic math, and I can understand that $12 million is more than $10 million. How is that not an increase? And they were like, oh, well, that's because last year they asked for $12 million, so now we're going to give them $12 million. And I said, I'm telling y'all what, I don't know what company or where you all have ever worked a budget, but I've never worked a budget that's been successful to do that. So what we did was we changed that philosophy. And if the money's not being spent, if it's earmarked for something but it's not being spent, then we pull it back. Because sometimes with projects, you're not prepared to do that. So there's no point in having money absolutely allocated for something that it's either not needed for or it's not going to be used for. So we pulled that back, and that's one of the reasons why you can see that the Budget Reserve Fund has gone from an average of 4 days to now around 45 days. And by June, we're expecting to be having enough money for 60 days to fund if all income were to stop, we could fund the government for 60 days. And so that's because we've actually counted every single dollar, every single penny. And I'm so proud of my colleagues and I for actually doing that, because that's what we said that we were going to do. And so therefore, we've been able to save your money, and now we can we can spend money today like we've never been able to do. And so I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the fact that we'll still have, by the end of June, 60 days in the budget reserve. And so that's one of the things that's going to give us the opportunity to continue to serve the community, to serve you, to make sure that education is funded, to make sure that health and family services is funded, to make sure that infrastructure is funded, and yet at the same time, eventually eliminate your state individual income tax. And so we're working really, really hard at doing that, and we will continue to do that as we continue to meet our obligations to protect the family and children in the womb, and then obviously all of our constitutional obligations that we have committed to. So I just want to tell you again, thank you very much for the opportunity to serve you, and thank you for being here today and being interested in in our, as Senator Deneen said, as our democracy or our constitutional republic, right? Right? So I want to get into all that, but you all know exactly what I'm talking about. And whenever I was elected the very first year, there were only 13% of the registered population that came out and voted. And we know that we need more than that. We need more people to be involved. We need more people to ask us the tough questions, as Mr. Alexander said. We need those questions and to hold us accountable to do what we said we were going to do in the campaign trail. So thank you all very much, and we'll have Q&A so you all can ask me all the hard questions, okay? Thank you.
Well, it's a tough crowd when you have to call these two. I'm not, but I have to have to say, working with the legislators in Hardin County, you do have some really, really good legislators. I'm really happy to work with them. I've been really impressed with Josh Calloway because we had his speech on the floor, but even not his speech on the floor was he always stands up for the children, and he always asks, what is the right thing to do? And he has that line there, and he will not cross that line. So I applaud him for doing that, and I really respect him a lot. So if you want somebody who's going to watch out for the children, you can always count on Josh Calloway. So, but exciting times. My first session was last time, and then this is my second one. So it's pretty exciting. It's extremely busy. 7 in the morning till 7, 8 at night. So it's a long days, but I really enjoy it. I really enjoy supporting and representing the constituents, and representing my community. My first vote when I got up here was to lower taxes to 4%. I said, all right, this is right in line. I want to lower the payroll tax for everybody across the state to 4%. So we're on a trajectory to do that. It's going to take some time to get there, but we are very focused, like Nancy said, managing that budget. And with me being a business background and a business person, I'm very aware of watching that budget and very aware of needless spending and trying to cut it. So we are very tight on that budget, and we should be, and we'll continue to do so until we drive that budget down to where we get down to 0%. So that's exciting news, but we're also bringing in a lot more things. We have, Ford Blue Mobile, we got stuff in Mullengreen, we have things, all kinds of state expansions going on through the state. So that's really going to bring in a lot more revenue, so it'll offset us when we start cutting taxes and continue to cut taxes. So the other thing that we're doing up there is this theme of local control. So trying to keep the state out of things and have the locals decide, have the counties and the cities decide what they want to do, and even when it comes to taxation, freeing up some ways that they could tax and restricting some ways they could tax to make it equal or to make it not necessarily to where they can overtax, but still give them the opportunity to decide that. And if you want to live in a community that has a lot of resources and things to do, then you can move to one that has one. It might be a little more tax, or you can move one that doesn't. So they'll be kind of confusion. So we're looking at local control, even when it comes to taxes, everything from wastewater to fluoride in the water. That's a bill that's come up to allow locals. There's the local wastewater treatment facilities decide, or water treatment facilities decide they want to put fluoride in the water or not. So some states have already eliminated that. So that's a bill that's come up. It was interesting this past week, we passed 3 major things. One bill in the House that we passed was to allow Eastern Kentucky University to have a DO school, Doctorate of Osteopathic Medicine. So the other one we passed was a bill that passed to allow Murray State University to have a veterinarian school. We don't have a veterinary school in Kentucky. So this would allow us to have a veterinarian school. So those were 2 pretty good bills, and then there was one that had to do with autonomous vehicles, evaluating and using autonomous vehicles in Kentucky. So we have states above us that are doing it, states below us that are doing it. We're kind of, if they're traveling, that's an area that we're looking at. So that was another bill that was introduced. And so one of the things, even though I'm a state representative, I represent the local area. I represent Hardin County, city, B-town area, and so we have issues that are state issues that come up in the Elizabethtown area. One of those was the driver's license center. Hopefully none of you have had to go get your driver's license done in the last year or so, but that's been a challenge. And so we've been working on that, and one of the things that, a bill that I filed was to allow the county clerks, if they desire to issue driver's license in every county. So that is the local control, so it allows them to do it if they want to, and if they don't want to. But recently, we have a grand opening set for about the 17th for the new Breckinridge Center in Elizabethtown. So that's something that is really exciting because hopefully we can get more efficiency through there and get more people. I think there were over 100 people out there the other day when I was out there. So I've been driving by checking on that as well. So another thing is with me being a veteran, I'm always going to stand up for the veterans. I always will protect and watch out for and try to defend what the rights that the veterans have and some of the benefits they've earned. And one of those benefits they've earned is in nursing homes. We have a veterans nursing home. It's actually in Nancy's area, but we have a veterans nursing home. And I had several calls come to me saying that, my dad was a World War II vet, and he keeps trying to get in this nursing home and can't get in there. So I went down there and evaluated, and Senator Needham went down there, and we evaluated. We're like, well, why are the nursing homes half full? They're half full, but they're not letting people in. And so they said it was a nursing issue. So I went back and checked with the legislature, and what had happened is they needed money for nursing. So we gave them money for nursing, and we gave them money for contract nursing, and they still were having this problem. And then they said that there was in the Radcliffe one, there was an air conditioning unit problem that Nancy Tate's committee was able to hopefully get passed. It's in the budget. We've been working really hard to put it, so it's in the budget this time to get that fixed to allow them to have a full occupancy in the nursing homes. So I did some research. Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio are all 95% full, but Kentucky's nursing homes for veterans are 50% full. So that's a Kentucky issue. So Senator Dean and I went to all the veterans nursing homes in Kentucky and looked at them, and they were all right at 50% full. Then Senator Dean and I, in front of a committee on Veterans and Military Affairs, we pulled the commissioner for the VMAP, in front of VMAP committee to question him, why are these empty? It is not right that these veterans are passing away and needing this care and they're not getting this care. So this session, you're seeing a lot of talk, a lot of action going on. With Nancy's help and Josh's help and with Senator Dean and I traveling these places, we've become very aware of this issue and we're working on it. So I just wanted you to be aware of something that's a local issue. It's a local nursing home, veterans nursing home, but it is a state issue because the state tries to help and support these. So the other thing was National Guard members, if they haven't done active duty service, they didn't have the right to be buried in a cemetery like the cemetery in Radcliffe. So we just passed on the House floor, it'll be over the Senate, hopefully Senator Neal can help us pass it over there, to allow if National Guard members have not been on federal active service, they can still get buried in a veteran cemetery, a state veteran cemetery. So just because they weren't activated for federal service doesn't mean that they didn't help with flooding, tornadoes, riots, DC riots, all these things. They were activated for state orders, but that doesn't count for federal orders. So it really didn't trigger the capability for them to be buried in the cemetery. So hopefully that will change, and I appreciate your help on that, Senator Dean. The other thing is immigration. So if you think immigration is not affecting us, it is. So immigration is a huge issue. If you can think about 2 times the population of Kentucky has been let in the United States undocumented. So the population of Kentucky times 2 is what's in our country now. So we're seeing a lot more, you just talked to the health department the other day, you're seeing more diseases. We thought polio was eradicated, you're seeing some more of that come up. You're seeing typhoid, you're seeing some of these diseases that we thought we had eradicated in the states re-emerging and get back in the states. And there's some diseases we're seeing that we don't even know what they are. So having this, I'm for immigration, but I'm for legal immigration. So I want to just make sure that we don't know what we have coming into our country, and we'd like to, support that in any way that we can from a state level. And I know we're limited in our capabilities too. The other bill that you might want to watch out for is there was a bill that was filed for school choice. So that's going to come up, and it's not for or against school choice. It's basically to allow it to be put on the ballot to allow school choice when it comes to private schools. So that doesn't mean it's going to happen. That just means that we're going to allow the people to vote for it and allow them to decide whether or not school choice is what they want or not. So quite a few things going on, and there's plenty more than that. Over 500 bills have been filed. So can you imagine 500 bills? If you're following the bills, the best thing to do is if you see one go into a committee Those are the ones that watch. You can't watch all 500, but you know the ones that are going to committee are the ones that get moving. So if you see something you like or you don't like, please let us know, because we want to hear from you, and we want to reach out to you and ask, where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on this fluoride for in the water? Where do you stand on some of these other things? One other item we did was we put in some money. There's $50 million as of right now. Maybe I should think so, but as of right now, the House has $50 million in the budget for a new wastewater treatment facility for Hardin County. So I want to thank you all for allowing me to serve you, and thank you all for supporting me when I'm up there. So thank you very much.
Thank you both. Now time for Josh Calloway. When I'm asking you these questions, Josh, and I'll state your opponent, I am doing this due to either photos, posts, comments, or replies on social media. You are more than welcome to discuss further on this if you choose so. You will have 5 minutes to reply back with each question. This is under the Election Committee School Choice HB 208 and HB 2. As you know, your opponent is not for school choice. Can you explain both bills and the difference in those bills, and if you are for or against them, and why?
Absolutely, and can I phone a friend if I get stuck?
I think one of them is his bill.
Yeah, one of them is his bill, that's right. Let me talk.
So there's two bills that have been filed in regard to the constitutional amendment that Representative Bratcher was just talking about. And one of those is House Bill 2. Just a little bit of knowledge, if a bill is 10 or under, it's particularly a priority bill. So those will be bills that are moving and that you will see on both sides. And sometimes we're aligned on the Senate side with some of our priority bills, and then we all know the Senate kind of does their own thing over there, and so we let them do what they do. But say that for Senator Deneen. So House Bill 2 deals with the constitutional amendment that would be required for the state of Kentucky to have a school choice program, as does House Bill 208 that I filed. The state Supreme Court came back after we had actually passed two bills that allow for the expansion of school choice in the state of Kentucky. And they said, if you want school choice in Kentucky, you have to change your constitution. So I filed House Bill 174 last session. We put it through committee, but it wasn't going to go onto the ballot until November of this year. And so I filed it again this year with a little bit of adjusted language. The House Bill 2 and House Bill 208, the primary differences between the two is my amendment has a House floor amendment on it, and basically what it does, it just opens the door for the legislature to be able to provide a school choice program anywhere or everywhere in the state of Kentucky for anybody. The House Bill 2 has a phrase inside of it that basically says that we would provide it in particular places. And so that is the primary two differences between those bills. My thing about going to the Constitution is that I don't want to go into the Constitution with policy. I want to go to the Constitution with statements and stances that we take as a state, and then we create policy around the Constitution. And so what I am supportive of either of those bills moving, as long as it's language that would apply to any kid in the state of Kentucky. School choice is not about structures and systems. It's about students. It's about kids. And that's really what this is about, why I've been supportive of it since I've been in the legislature. I want to make sure that every child has the best fit education they can possibly have, and every parent is empowered to be able to provide that for them. Shouldn't matter what your zip code is as to whether or not that you can afford a good education for your child. And so I support both bills as long as the language is readable for the voter and as long as that it would be available for all children in the state of Kentucky.
Thank you. This will be on medical marijuana. HB 136 in 2022 and the SB 47 in 2023. A medical marijuana bill, HB 136, was proposed in 2022, which passed the House and died in the Senate. Your opponent advocated hard for medical marijuana bills. In 2023, another bill, SB 47, was introduced and passed. Can you explain what the difference between both bills were and why you voted for the 2022 and against the 2023? And what is your stance on recreational marijuana?
Absolutely. So there's a lot packed in that question.
You mean,
And yes.
I know where he stands on.
So this is one of the issues that, we hear the term promises made, promises kept, right? You elect us to do what we say we're going to do when we campaign. And so often, that's why people are disappointed in politicians, because they get up there and they change on the principles they say they stand on. I'm thinking that the only thing that I have voted for, that I said on the campaign trail that I would never vote for, was the 2022 House Bill 136, medical marijuana. And when I talk about this subject, understand that we all have varying opinions, and we can all speak to why we did and believe what we believe, voted for what we voted for. So this is Josh Calloway in District 10. So the House Bill 136, I got engaged in that bill specifically with Representative Demas, who had been carrying this bill for many years. And I started educating myself on the subject. I got involved with physicians, got involved with people outside of the state that had already passed some of these similar bills. And my primary thing was this: if we're going to call it medicinal, then treat it like medicine. If we're going to call it medicinal, treat it like medicine. I do not support recreational marijuana. I will never support recreational marijuana in the state of Kentucky. It's not a door that I will ever open. I work with helping men every day of my life that are dealing with addiction, and the gateway that they tell me that they were introduced into different drugs because of that, and it's a personal stance that I have and that I take. So we worked that bill. Jason made multiple changes to that bill, worked with the Senate, some of the people that were supportive of it, to tighten it up and to make sure that it was treated like medicine, and it was specific to a few conditions, while at the same time we were providing funding to the University of Kentucky to do research so that we could understand the medicinal properties of cannabis for the future, and then we could make good decisions based on that. And so I voted for the bill. We came back in the following year, this past session, and the bill originated in the Senate to Senate Bill 47. That particular bill, in my opinion, a lot of the guidelines and guardrails were removed. It was no longer following the medicinal path. The board that was overseeing it was moved from the FDA to the firearms and tobacco. And so the regulation of it, to me, looked like that it could easily start down the path of being recreational. The sponsor of the bill even stood up on the floor and said, this bill has a lot of issues, but we're going to pass it and fix it next year. And that's just not policy that I could get on board with and support at all. And so I voted against that particular bill because I felt like it was getting outside of the realm of the medicinal path, and have been working this year with people to be able to make sure that we keep it on a medicinal path, because I do not support it being recreational.
Thank you. Protecting minors on social media. Recently, Congress had the social media CEOs in a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. The hearing was about them failing to protect children from sexual exploitation on their platforms from online predators. Congress is also working on several bills, which is the Stop CSAM Act and Kids Online Safety Act. With this, you sponsored two bills that could help parents monitor children's activity while they're online. Your opponent has posted that she does not support these bills. Can you please explain these bills? Can you please explain what these bills would do and why you support them?
Sure. So let me say first of all that I am 100% in support of free speech. Free speech is the protecting agent for all the liberties and the freedoms that we enjoy outside of God Himself. So it's so important that we protect free speech. But the guise of free speech should never, ever be able to be used to be able to harm children and to see children exploited. And so there's this section that we have in our federal government that's called 230 that allows for a free speech platform for all these social media companies. But at the same turn, it says that they cannot be held criminally liable for anything that happens on their platforms. And so what I did is I filed a bill here primarily that it was to require for these companies to allow for parental engagement and involvement in between the social media companies and their children. And so we want parents to be involved and engaged in their children's lives. We want them to know what is going on. And there have been multiple situations that have been brought to me of parents that have had children that have been exploited through social media that they had no idea they were even engaged in social media, whether it be social media gaming or social media platforms for chatting. And so as a result of that, I filed that bill. I think it's a great opportunity to protect our kids. They are absolutely using algorithms to attract our children and to exploit them and expose them to unbelievable sexualized content. It's unacceptable for them to do that. I want parents to be engaged and involved in that. And if a child doesn't have parental engagement and involvement, I still want to see them protected. And so we filed this bill, and it just requires that. We're working through that process now. I'm working with Representative Dietz, and she has a bill that she had filed as well. We think there's a good chance it's going to move. I also have a resolution that I will be filing next week, and that resolution just says that if the federal government's not going to do anything, as a state, we have the inherent right to protect the children within our borders. And so we're going to continue to do that. That's why I support it. I think we can have free speech and protect kids both at the same time.
Thank you. The next question is a three-part question. It's on education and parental rights protection. SB 5 in 2023 and SB 150 2023 and HB 191 in 2024. Your first one, A. Last session, you and several other legislators lost your committees due to standing up against indoctrination of our children in the schools when trying to get SB 5 passed. Can you explain both these bills, SB 5 and SB 150, from the 2023 legislative session and why you supported them?
Maybe not in 5 minutes. I'll make it quick. So SB 5 was a bill that actually dealt with books in the school system, and it gave parents a pathway to be able to make a complaint, have their complaint heard, and then have the potential to have that book removed from the school system. The Senate President had actually worked on this particular bill. It was near and dear to his heart. He had Senator Howell carry that bill, and he went on Fox News on a Wednesday morning and he talked about that bill and about how important it was to protect children in the state of Kentucky. I had some other initiatives I was working on, and I got the bright idea that I would put some amendments on that bill of the Senate President's because it was moving and maybe we could see some of that stuff move forward. And that's exactly what I did. I spoke with him about it. We had several conversations. He told me to do what I felt like I needed to do. And so we put some amendments on there to be able to strengthen that bill and to strengthen parental rights in the state of Kentucky. Those amendments failed, but Senate Bill 5 moved forward, and it was a good start, and that's what a lot of people said and knew, that it was a good start to clean up the library systems in some of our school districts that have unbelievable, explicit material inside of them. I have documentation of it. I wouldn't even want to show it to you. Things that I have filed away in my desk at Frankfurt that children are exposed to, and I'm not okay with that. And so we fought hard to make sure that we could see that move forward. Senate Bill 5 passed, it went all the way through, and we got it completely signed into law. Senate Bill 150 was a conglomeration of bills. We have worked on a bill that prevented gender reassignment surgeries in the state of Kentucky. And Representative Decker have worked hard on that and put a lot of documentation together. And Senator Wise was working on a parental rights bill on the Senate side. And so a lot of things happened throughout a couple weeks, but they all came together inside of one bill. That was Senate Bill 150. And basically what it did is it dealt with parental rights to have to be in the know of what was going on in their child's education. It dealt with teachers in the school system to not be required to step outside of their own conscience and beliefs and to be required to call somebody by a different pronoun or gender than what they knew that they were. And then it dealt with the bathroom system as well, or in the locker room system, and required that they have a policy that boys be in boys' bathrooms and girls be in girls' bathrooms. And so we passed that bill. It ended up going completely through. Then I filed House Bill 191 this session, and basically it is an addendum to the Senate Bill 5 that deals with books. And this is all it says. If a parent or a guardian can't read from the book in a school board meeting, then they shouldn't have it in the school district, period. Get it out. And so it's a real simple little piece of legislation. I think it's common sense, and I filed it because I don't think kids should be exposed to pornography.
So you just hit number 2, you covered the HB 191. That was part 2 of the question. So part 3 of the question is, your opponent has openly spoken against these bills and supported Governor Andy Beshear posing for a photo with the Drag Queens Kentucky Order of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And in her words on social media, stated the governor had an amazing character. She also has publicly supported Pride Month and LGBTQ plus agenda. What are your thoughts on that day and the atmosphere that was around the Capitol?
Well, that was an unbelievable day. My family was with me that day, or at least my wife and my daughter, and we were overriding the veto on that particular day of the governor's, because he did veto this legislation that we passed to protect children. And how people got past that, I'm not real sure, but I try to consistently remind people of that when they understand. I want people to understand what we are working with. And from the Senate side, the House side, we have reached out many times to his administration for support and for help, and for that to reciprocate both ways. And this was one of those issues that he absolutely fought against us on. It was loud, it was boisterous that day, and but there was an absolute peace about that day. I don't know how to explain it. To know that we were doing the right thing for God, for our kids, and for the state of Kentucky. And so with all that was taking place, my wife was up in the gallery when about 30-some people locked arms and began to chant. I don't know if any of you saw the video, but they literally shut us down from conducting business on the floor. I think 19 of them were arrested, and some of them have already been prosecuted, and they're moving forward with that. And she was literally sitting like 12 feet over from where they were. The state police came up and brought them down. That was the atmosphere of that day. And this is the thing that I understand. I respect everybody's right to do that, but I also want them to respect my right to have values and principles and to stand on them. And we are in a battle for the culture of this nation. And they have a different view for what they want society to look like for their kids and grandkids than I have for my kids and grandkids. And I'm going to fight for that. And so that is exactly what I plan to continue to do if I'm reelected, is to make sure that the society my kids raise their kids in is better than the one that I have been raised in. And we know for a fact that that is not the case right now. Things have changed at a rapid pace. I'm not for infringing upon anybody's rights whatsoever, but I'm also not for them pushing their rights upon us and forcing us to have to approve of who and what they are when they are going contrary to what is best. This is what is amazing. And I know some people probably thinks I shouldn't say this in public, but I'm going to say it anyway. Some of these things, besides the fact that they're common sense, we teach them because they are what is best. If we teach, for instance, heterosexuality in the school system, and we teach about that, and we talk about a mom and a dad, regardless of where anybody feels or how anybody feels or thinks about those particular things, it's the only thing that preserves society. So it's what's best, irregardless of what anybody thinks, it's still what is best. And so we should encourage what is best for our society. I could have a philosophical discussion, a biblical discussion, but on common sense. It's what's best, it preserves society. And so we say that on one end, and then they want to kill them before they ever make it out of the womb on the other end. And so we're just trying to do what's best for our state, for our country, and for our children.
The next question is a two-part question. This is on supporting candidates. The Republican Party of Kentucky's rules enumerate Republican integrity, which is 1205 in the RPK rules. This is important. The summary of the rule has 3 consequences for not supporting a Republican in the general election. 1, you cannot hold an office in the county party. 2, if you don't support the presidential nominee, you are ineligible to be a delegate. And 3, you can be disavowed. As you know, your opponent publicly supported and wore a t-shirt that said Republicans for Andy during the 2023 Fancy Farm event. She has many photos classifying herself as an Andy groupie and stresses how she loves Bratcher. Governor Bratcher was not the only Democrat your opponent supported, as she has many photos with other Democrat candidates and attended the governor's inauguration in December 2023. She also is in support of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who recently changed parties only because the DNC wasn't being fair to his candidacy and now is running as an independent with a Democratic agenda. A, what are your thoughts on this, and did you support a Republican or a Democrat for the 2023 election?
Say that one more time, that last statement.
What are your thoughts on this? And did you support a Republican or a Democrat for the 2023 election?
Let me lay one thing out. First of all, I am a Christian first, a constitutionalist second, a conservative third, and a Republican fourth, and in that order. So I want that to be clear. And life is a deal breaker for me in any election whatsoever. Life is a deal breaker. And this is where we're at as a nation. I support Republican candidates. I did in the 2023 election. I supported Daniel Cameron when he won the nomination because I support life first and foremost. And that is important to me. And we've become so divided as a nation that it's literally become left and right. And when I say that, it is the association, the Democrat platform. They have stated that they support abortion. And that is something that I cannot and I will not ever support. Whenever I signed to run for office, I stated on that signature that I would support the platform of the Republican Party. That is what I am. I'm proud to be that. I'm not ashamed of it at all. I'm not ashamed of any of you. I'm not ashamed of anybody in the Republican Party that does not agree with me on issues. But I do know this, at its foundation and at the principle is life. That is the drawing and dividing line, and I'm always going to stand up for life.
And the part two is who will you be supporting for the 2024 presidential election?
I will be supporting Donald J. Trump for I'm hoping that he'll be supporting me as well. I do have an old radio endorsement that he did with my name on it, and so I'll probably be pulling that back out. But, you know, this is the thing. It is a shame that we have come to where we are in our nation, and that we are in the place that we are, that we're looking at people that are standing up for leadership and seeing the kinds of people that these people are. When you look at what has been done to our country in the last 3 years, it is unbelievable that we have got here. And there's nobody else in the race that is running that can do for this country what they have already proven they have done than Donald Trump. I may not agree with him on every single issue, but he is the man for the job at the time in which we are in that's running. So I definitely will support him.
Next question is regarding DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, HB 9 and SB 6. Your opponent supports diversity, equity, inclusion. Can you go over the details of these two bills, and do you support them, and why?
Yeah, so diversity, equity, inclusion, I call it discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, because really that's what it promotes. It is something that has been going on in our country for years on end. You could look all the way back to even, with things that happened in the business world years ago, where they began to try to divide people out. And so I am 100% for diversity, and I'm 100% for merit. And I think that merit is what is important, that brings everybody together. It gives everybody a chance. It puts everybody on the same playing field. And these two particular bills, I'm in the House, and I particularly like the House bill better. Senate Bill 6 has already moved, and this is what I will say the primary differences between the two bills and why that I support the House bill. And that is this: I support whatever cuts the head off of the snake. And the only way to actually deal with diversity, equity, and inclusion in our college system, which, by the way, is promoting racism, by the way, it promotes division, the only way to address it is you have to defund it. You have to get rid of the diversity, equity, inclusion departments, and you got to take the money that goes to them, and you have to eliminate the funding for it. It's the only way to make it happen. And so the House bill goes further. It doesn't just rein in and declare what the DEI offices shall do and shall not do and try to promote the merit that we are trying to promote. The House bill says we're defunding it all together and get rid of it. And so I'm supportive of that bill. I know there's going to be a lot of work between us and the Senate to come together before the end of this session to decide which bill we pass and what language gets out. But that's where I stand on the issue.
Thank you. The next question will be about the Kentucky Family Foundation. The Family Foundation stands for Kentucky families and the biblical values that make them strong by advocating for God-honoring public policy in our Commonwealth. Their core issues are family, life, religious freedom, human sexuality, and human dignity. The Kentucky Family Foundation does a family legislative scorecard on each of our legislators. Can you explain a little on this and what is your percentage?
Yes, I can talk about this a little bit. I believe I had 100% on their
You did.
scorecard. So, and I will say this, that we don't legislate for good scores on people's scorecard. We legislate for good policy, and then the scores reflect. That's what we do. And so, with the Family Foundation, they have been a great group to work with. And I know there were some people that were disappointed with their scores coming out of this session, some a little bit behind the scenes, because they used some procedural votes in their scorecard. And some of that was my fault, and I'm sure some of them would like to get after me for that. Because some of the amendments that I brought on Senate Bill 5 on the floor, because they were so family oriented, even though that people may have known or thought that it wasn't going to pass, so they abstained from supporting it. They used some of those procedural votes in their scorecard. But I was at 98% of the time, I'm going to fight for the best policy possible. And when we're at the end, we're at the end. But there's 2% of the time that I feel like we have to leave it all out there. And when it comes to our kids, that's the way that I believe is what I feel is the most important thing. And so I just left it all out there, and that's why I ended up with 100%. Thank you.
The next question is on Certificate of Need, HB 202, HB 203, HB 204. Can you please explain these bills and let us know if you'll be supporting them and why?
Wow. This is a very in-depth subject that I am very green on as far as understanding it specifically. I have tried to familiarize myself on them. I'm great friends with Representative Proctor that has filed these bills. I know that 204 just got referred to committee, and it looks like that House Bill 204 is going to move. A piece of that we have been working on are the birthing centers, and that is something that I believe has a lot of broad support in the legislature that would allow these birthing centers across the state without having to be underneath the purview of the governing hospital bodies in those regions. And so I'm a free market person. I've listened to the arguments on both sides as to whether or not that CON or Certificate of Need being repealed. I've heard it helps the rural hospitals. I've heard that it hurts the rural hospitals, and I've listened to arguments on both sides. This is what I do believe in. I believe in free market, and I believe in competition. And I personally would support the repealing of the Certificate of Need that would allow for the competition and free market to take place. I'm sure that if you want to ask some more in-depth questions, some of these people are more knowledgeable about it than I am, but that's where I stand on those bills. I have co-sponsored all three of those, I believe.
The last question is a two-part question. It's on election integrity and voter verification. Since the 2022 election, many Americans have lost faith in our elections. We have 87,879 registered voters in Hardin County, 59 precincts that is downsized to 12 voting centers. We have 15,629 registered in Breckinridge County, with 16 precincts that is downsized to 8. Since COVID-19, we have gone from election day to election season. A, what are your thoughts on election integrity and getting our elections back to pre-COVID? Making election day one-day voting election, make it a federal holiday, stop unexcused absentee voting, mail-in ballots only for our military, elderly, medically ill, opening back up our precincts, paper ballots, and hand counts only.
And that's a part of the question.
That's an A part of the question.
All right.
Basically,
So-
pre-COVID election.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is what I'll tell you. I'm 100% traditional. I believe in election day I believe that it is a right and a responsibility for every individual in the United States of America to participate in that. And I am 100% supportive of having an election day and having it as a federal holiday so that people can be off and engage in the process. This is the thing, is that it is not just our right, but it is a responsibility thing. We have the responsibility, and when you have responsibility, there's effort. It requires effort. And so whenever you make something completely effortless, it does open the door for there to be cheating and for there to be distrust in the system. I'm going to tell you what will be the greatest thing that people can do to get trust back in the system. Participate in it in November of 2024. You want the opportunity to do something about election integrity? Go vote in 2024. This is what has happened. We have had good people that are not voting because they don't trust the system. And I understand how they come to that conclusion. That will not fix the problem.
That's right.
We have to get everybody to the polls and get them engaging and voting. And then we have to get people in administration that make sure that we have secure election system. We are moving to complete paper ballots, and so we've taken that step. We passed some bills out of committee this past week in the elections committee that I'm the vice chair in. And we are looking at voter integrity, and we're trying to make sure that we're being transparent in what we're doing. We know that there's work to do, and we're moving forward with that work. But we have to participate. Whenever we have low participation, this all about legislation it's a math equation, right? You either have the amount of votes to pass something or you don't. And so if you want to change what's going on in Frankfurt or in Washington, D.C., you and people that believe like you have to go vote. And if we do that, we can make the difference that we want to make and make sure that it is secure. We will work on that. I think both sides, I think Senator Deneen, y'all passed a bill out a week and a half or so ago that dealt with voter ID. And we've got some ideas for a little amendment over there on that bill that we're going to talk to the Senate about to even make it a little bit better. But we're working toward that. I'm supportive of that. I'm supportive of no excuse voting, early voting being done away with. I'm supportive of that as me personally. So.
Part two of the question, what are your thoughts on getting our voter rolls back to the county and out of the Secretary of State's office, clean them up, and stop using e-poll books?
So there's a couple things that are going on with our voter rolls right now. We have been utilizing a system called ERIC. I think a lot of people have heard of that system, and there's been a lot of discussion about it. And I think our contract with that is ending here real soon. And so we're moving away from that system. We have to have interstate compacts with other states in order to make sure that we can work with them and share this data back and forth. I'm always supportive of getting things as local as we can possibly get them. And so pushing out to local control is something that I will always support, and continuing to clean these up. One of the bills that we passed this past week out of committee actually will allow for you, the citizens, to engage in voter roll cleanup. You can go look up your address and see if there's more voters registered in your house than actually lives there. And if there are, you can report that back to the Secretary of State, and they can begin the process that it takes to remove those people from it. So we passed that this past week, and we'll continue moving forward with cleaning that up, but I support local control.
Thank you. To summarize, would you do a 3-minute closing statement, and then we will open it up for Q&A for about 20-25 minutes for Q&A.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come and for you to come out here on a Saturday afternoon with the weather we've had and everything that has taken place. everybody's busy. It means a lot to me. I fully know that the engagement that we put in for Frankfurt up there for you is important, or you wouldn't be here today. And so we appreciate the fact that you engage. You're probably some of the people we get emails from, we get calls from, that other legislators hear from, and that is what it takes to make a difference. And so I want you to know, one, that we listen and we hear the feedback that you all give. And our goal is to represent you. We are one of you, so you represent one of you, or you elect one of you to represent you up in Frankfurt. So we're just one of you. We're nobody. I'm nobody special personally. These are special people. I'm definitely not. I'm just up there trying to do what is right. And so this is what I would tell you, is that I'm up there to represent you, and I also stand on principle. And that is very important for us to have principles, personal principles. And the reason it's important is that we have voices all around us that are telling us what to do. We have lobbyists come in that tell us what to do. We have leadership that we're working with that are guiding us in a direction. We have colleagues that are pushing things that they want to get done, and they're telling us what to do. And then we have the public that is telling us, this is what we need you to do. And this is what I will tell you, is that I plan to always stand on principle. When I don't know what to do, I go back to the truth and the fact, the foundational principles of the Constitution. What does God think about it? And I base it on that. And so when the other side gets loud, as they did when we were trying to override Senate Bill 150, it was an easy decision to hit the yes on that button, because I knew that that's what y'all wanted me to do. I knew it's what the Constitution required me to do, and I knew that's what he wanted me to do. And I'll continue to do that if y'all let me again, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone with a question?
Steve, I just wanted to comment on something that you brought up about fluoride. That, did you say that it's passed or it's in committee?
It's passed out of committee, so it should be, you make it to the House floor. So basically, it gives a local control that the county or the wastewater treatment center can make a determination on whether or not to put fluoride in the water. So,
Is there any way that the community can have any kind of input on that? Because it's really not good for us at all. And I called the water company after I had looked at their records of what's in our water. And of course, the fluoride was in there. But I've also found out that in 2019, we had no chromium in our water. In 2020, we do have chromium in our water, along with fluoride and a lot of other things, probably barium, aluminum, all other kinds of things. And this kind of goes with what Dahlia said about geoengineering. Does that have any influence? Is there any way we can influence geoengineering in our state because it's getting in our water system?
yeah, I mean, continue to be advocates, continue to call us and talk to us about it, and let us know where you stand on this, so we can try to stop some of the legislation.
But do you know if there'll be any kind of input from the community to pressure the water company to not have it in there?
Well,
it's not good. It's not good for the teeth.
This is not something that's going to take fluoride out of the water. It's something that says that the county or the wastewater, or the water treatment center at the local level would decide whether to do so or not. So it doesn't completely take it out. They can still continue to do it, or they decide not to. So that would be more of a, what we call local control, is giving the counties and the city the ability to determine that. So it would be contacting your city or your county who's running the wastewater, who's running the treatment center.
All right, one other thing I just want to say, as far as the integrity, are we getting some kind of counter to go when the paper ballots go through at the polling centers? Is there going to be some kind of a counter that's going to be able to match up with what's recorded on air?
We right now have that. And so just to let you know, Ron Smith, I think, is doing a great job. He took a voting machine over to some 6th graders, and they all filled out the form and did the scan thing, and they all hand counted. And then they verified the hand count to the machine, and it was exactly right. So I also want to say, I know that hand counting has been a big topic, but if you think about you know, from my background in business and manufacturing, if we make a product and we 100% quality inspect that product, you're still at best 80-something% effective. So that means if we had one person and their job was solely to count or to make sure that this item met standard, that you would be 80-something% effective. But if you had two people count, then you'd be 90-something% effective. So even hand counting, you still have error. You still have human error in hand counting. So hand counting is maybe not the number one solution. Maybe it's a combination of hand counting combined or verification through machine or other ways. But I know that hand counting has been a topic here. But just be aware that if you hand count, you do have the human error factor as well, and you have opportunities for fraud there. And just talking to an attorney that was on someone's campaign that investigated the fraud in the certain key states in this last election, he said that the number one way that fraud was happening in our election was mail-in ballot. So if we wanted to really focus on fraud in our elections, we need to focus on the mail-in ballot side of that, I think.
And I will say on the bill that we passed this past week, also deals with auditing, and so there will be a machine that will be pulled in each district. They will actually hand count every ballot compared to the tape, and we will do that audit, and then there's triggers in place as to what to do should we find an anomaly and how to take care of that. So that was in the bill that we passed, and we're planning to move it forward, so.
If I want to add just a little bit to that, so 6 years ago, whenever I got elected, I ran against the 12-year incumbent, so I had a 10% chance of winning. So I actually won by 6 votes. So one of the things that we did, I was very concerned about voter integrity. And so while a lot of people thought that was kind of interesting, since I only won by 6 votes, that I would be concerned about voter integrity. But one of the reasons why I was so concerned about it was, and I'm sure I'm going to get their names mixed up, but it's like the Americans for Voter Integrity. And so one of the things that they had done is that they had notified me regarding some of the discrepancies that they had found in Kentucky as well as in other states. So I got very interested in this topic. So we've passed several pieces of legislation since in the past 6 years working with our Secretary of State, Adams, because he is very interested in making sure that our voting system, preserving the integrity. So in this last election, so while we might have been, I know I was disappointed in who won the governor's election, I reached out to the same people and I said, okay, so 6 years ago, you notified me regarding some concerns that you had with the integrity of our election. What did you see in this last election? And they said, nothing of substance. So I'm just going to tell you, that gave me a lot of, that confirmed that we're on the right path. Now, I will tell you that the bad guys will always continue to be bad guys. The evil people continue to always be evil. And so therefore, we should never sit on our laurels and not be concerned about voter integrity. The people that want to cheat will find a way to cheat. So we'll continue to watch how people that are going to cheat, and we'll do everything that we can to prevent that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We just passed a law in the House, or a bill in the House that basically said you have to be a citizen to vote. There was a lot of debate on this on the House floor, which you would imagine how we're debating, who's debating this on it. But we passed this in the House, and you would think that, I was like, I thought you already had to be a citizen to vote. But we had to go back, we square up any loopholes there may be to question that, because if you think about, we've got twice as many people of the population of Kentucky that are in our nation now. Can they vote? So I don't know what states are doing. Yes, sir.
I have a question that might be a follow-up. I don't know which bill you're referring to, but HB 5053 provides for, okay, thank you. HB 53 provides for a detailed planned mandatory eye-to-eye audit of an election day result for a randomly selected race in each county in order to validate the results. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to that as far as where your stand is on that. One of the amendments that might be good to add to that would be to perhaps to allow a clerk or the majority of the county board of elections to open the ballot box, not just the clerk themselves. So we've got some bipartisan representatives. So I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts are, whether you support this or oppose it.
Yes, that was the bill that passed through my committee, and there was a committee sub on that bill that did what you just said. So it will be bipartisan. It will involve the clerk, it will involve the State Board of Elections, and it will involve the chosen people from the local election board that will do that. And it will be a hand-eye count. It will be every single ballot will be counted in that particular machine, and then anomalies will produce action from there. But I think everybody supports that. It's John Hodgson's bill is a great bill, and it's a beginning. It's a start. The process from a federal standpoint to remove people from voter rolls is rigorous, and it should be, but it's rigorous, and so it's a piece of the puzzle that we're working on.
You mentioned recreational marijuana. While you were talking, I looked up. This is in the National Library of Medicine, and it's dated 2021. Since recreational marijuana was legalized, traffic deaths where drivers tested positive for marijuana increased at 138%, while all Colorado traffic deaths increased 29%. Since recreational marijuana was legalized, traffic deaths involving drivers who tested positive for marijuana more than doubled from 55 in 2013 to 131 people killed in 2020. Since recreational marijuana was legalized, the percentage of all Colorado deaths, traffic deaths, including drivers who tested positive for marijuana increased from 11% to 20%. From 2013 to 2020. And the other comment I wanted to mention, I don't know if you all have seen about election integrity, the movie 2000 Mules. If you have not, I recommend that you all watch that. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank each of you for being here today. I really appreciate having an opportunity to address you in this environment. And as part of that, I'd like to encourage each of you individually going forward to conduct town hall meetings in your district. You can see this is important to us. And most legislators that I know doesn't do that. So I encourage you to build on this and make it individual in your district as you go forward. Thank you. So my question that I have, I follow along to some degree with local education. But since I've been living in Hardin County, this county has been building a school. It's like almost a school every 3 years, a new school. Millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. So you would think if we build the Taj Mahals that we're building for the children today, that we would have an incredibly efficient education program. Sadly, that's not the case. The National Association of Educational Progress is a federal agency that tracks progress throughout America. They test 2 different grades of children each year. Guess what, folks? The numbers are going down. We're pouring more. I know you guys are spending more money to the schools, to the state budget. More money, more new buildings. The results are getting less and less. We're poorer and poorer. Somewhere, there has to be someone that can figure this project out, because I go to school board meetings locally now. It's for the kids. It's for the kids. Well, wait a minute. If it's for the kids, why is their numbers going down? So, I guess you have to get down to the root cause. It's the union. So my question, what can the legislative body do to remove or reduce union influence in our schools? And would you support that? Thank you.
I'll start with that. I agree with you. I think the greatest thing that we got out of COVID was a view into what was going on inside of school systems. It really opened parents' eyes. I think one of the number one things that we could do is pass school choice, and also parental involvement has got to change inside of our children's lives when it comes to school. I'm 100% in agreement with you. They are the snake. The head's got to be cut off the snake to deal with it. We passed a bill that started that process. We did two things. One thing that we did was we said that the state was not going to facilitate funds to fill out applications for the school unions. And so we were removing that from the school district and then make it completely between the union and the employee instead of the school districts facilitating that. The second thing that we did was we opened up the ability to have a fund to provide insurance for teachers so that there would be no need for the school unions. Now, the Kentucky Supreme Court came back and they didn't like the bill that we passed and said, it wasn't the Kentucky Supreme Court, I think it was Judge Shepard. I can't remember what you may know, Senator Deneen, but they did not like that bill, and so it is tied up in the court system right now. But us two were on that committee, and we had some very pointed questions for those that were driving the unions in the state of Kentucky. They literally had campaign signs up right in front of the Capitol against us, against people that were running. And so they're using those funds for that. Steve went in hard on that with some of those people just to highlight that. And so those are a few things that we can do. And we're working toward that. I do support it. I do believe that that is where much of the corruption comes from, probably most of the corruption comes from. And so I personally would and do support it and have in the past.
So, as you were up here, you're peeling back this onion on the education system. It's kind of alarming, some of the things I'm seeing. So we provide, it's about $10,000 per student that we're providing to educate per student for public schools in Kentucky, $10,000. It's about 40-60% comes from the state as to local match. Okay, so we increase that every year. It continues to go up. And the teaching, we have some spectacular teachers, and we have some really good schools. And we're fortunate in Hardin County to have some good schools too. But if I look at KDE, Kentucky Department of Education, and I look at their top earners, the person that is making the most money right now at KDE is the Kentucky Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging person is making assistant commissioner is making $160,000 a year. And they're the highest paid person right now because they're an interim and a director. Even the director of KDE that is not making that much. And you have about 15 people in KDE that are making $150,000 or more. So as I continue to dig and continue to look at some of the things that are going on, you have a person basically over every aspect of that. We rank 38th in the nation when it comes to math. We rank 29th in the nation when it comes to reading. We are not moving the needle. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but what we've been doing in the past will not get us to where we need to be in the future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that question. Mr. Alexander, you and I were actually at a school board meeting that where it was encouraged for us not to be there and participate. And that was a long time ago, but I do, I'm still not encouraged to participate, that's correct. But I do encourage, like Josh and Steve have both said, it's very, 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 very important for everyone to be involved at the local level. That's the question about fluoride. So what we, to me, it's like, a lot of people don't even know who their congressmen are, their congressman people. And not only that, but you can't reach out, and I say you can't reach out and smile. Sometimes people don't even know who the representative is, so you can't reach out and smile us. But you know exactly who the local people are. And so if you have concerns, my point is that to please continue to work with those people and to make your presence known and to be vocal, obviously be polite about it. I'm not, when I say smile, I don't really mean that literally, but and going back to Josh's point about school choice, I wrote that down to come back and talk about that. And to the involvement in the elections. There's been an analysis that's been done, and it says that basically 1.1 million people have to come out and to vote for this school choice constitutional amendment. So 1.1 million people, so that means that at least a fourth of the population has to come out and vote in Kentucky. So if you go back to whenever I was elected and only 13% of the population comes out to vote for, period, the numbers are skewing there. I know I'm skewing the numbers a little bit, but you've got to, at least, enough people have to come out and vote for this in order for there to be support to put a constitutional amendment, to on the ballot for that constitutional amendment to pass. So therefore, anyone who's interested in school choice, yay or nay, you gotta come out and you've gotta vote for it, or we will never have the opportunity to do this. I think the thing too is I would highly encourage you to go back and look at House Bill 2 and House Bill 208. To look at those and to see if that were to be placed on the ballot for you, would you understand the question? Would you understand the point that's on the ballot? And it's very important for people to understand what's going to be on the ballot, for you to say yay or nay now, if you could understand what's going to be on the ballot, because most people who don't understand what's on that ballot will automatically vote no. We're going to do that, because if we don't understand it, we're not going to vote yes on something that we don't understand. So I highly encourage you to go back and look at House Bill 2 and House Bill 208, and if you don't understand either one of them, let us know. By all means, be vocal. Let us know whether or not you will understand that ballot, what's going to be on the ballot, that constitutional amendment. We don't know now whether it's going to be what number it's going to be. We won't know until the Secretary of State helps us work through that. But go back and look at those two bills. And if you need help finding them, which I don't think anybody in this room is going to need help finding them because you're very involved, but please go back, look at those two bills, and give us feedback, please.
Gina, did you have any questions for us? I appreciate you. She is everywhere, every event, every time I go through there. So we appreciate all the work you do with the newspaper.
Curious question. This is kind of off of getting bills passed or whatever. Since they started using this new blacktop on the highways, when they put that white paint down, they put that yellow paint down. As soon as it starts to rain, you don't see them no more. I have been talking ever since they've been doing this. I have found deaf ears. 2 weeks ago, I spoke with Representative Wood in regards to trying to find funding to get some type of phosphorus type paint to go on the highways to separate the lines, so when you're driving down the road in the rain, you're not looking at a black road, you're looking at a road with defined lines. I know they had the center reflectors, that as soon as you get snow, they're gone. Then you're back to a black road with stripes noticing during the day. How would we go about trying to get funding for that and getting it taken care of? Because I don't know which one of you all are in the transportation highway yet. Or committees, excuse me.
So this is the second time I've heard about this issue, and I've done some digging with some of the transportation people on it. I have some information that was positive, and at this moment, I cannot recall, it was last year, and some things have happened since then. But I can get you some information on that. I think Senator Deneen serves on transportation in the Senate as well, and Senator Deneen, you serve on transportation, correct? You don't? Okay. That's Higgins, Senator Higgins, okay. Gotcha. We'll get you some information on that. I know that there was some safety concerns looked at. There was something to do with some pre-bought material that they were getting out and maybe moving into new material, but I don't recall exactly what that is. But
like last night, my wife had to take me to emergency care, and driving down the Patriot Parkway, when she made the turn off 220, she almost ran off the road because she couldn't see the stripes. And that's true with snow coming down, but if you had a more lit up line to define where the lanes are.
Yes, sir.
And I've been trying to find information for this. I've been talking to state legislators about this ever since they started using this new blacktop. I've gotten deaf ears.
Okay.
And like I said, Representative Whitten, she was like, I'm open to this, let me go talk to some people.
Yes.
I haven't heard from her yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we had I don't know if it's the blacktop or if it's the paint, but a couple of months ago I was involved in a district meeting regarding the materials that are being used for the blacktop. And there was a lot of conversation about that, a lot of investigation. So I think that I consider Danita shaking his head because we were involved in that conversation. So I believe that we're gonna, there's some awareness, but as Josh said, we'll continue to work on that and answer that question for you.
Thank you.
All right, I have a question. With the school boards, let's go back to the school boards. Josh was with me when I went to the Elizabethtown and the Hardin County and read some of the books. So E-Town schools was pretty shocked, but they were okay. In Hardin County, they came out to me afterwards, and I spelt these words because I was uncomfortable with the children that were in the room. They came out and they said, oh man, we're gonna have to delete and clean up the recording because of the language that I was, spelling out. My question is, what can we do to get rid of the ALA? They must go because they're issue.
I had actually looked at some language for that in House Bill 191 and worked with some groups. I'm speaking off cuff just a little bit here, but there are some federal issues with that we need to work through as a state. I've talked to some people. My goal is that will be something I will work on in the interim after this session, and then try to have legislation to file, knowing and understanding what the process would be. But they absolutely are the ones that are pushing this stuff out into our school system. And again, this is one of those things that there's competing ideas on, and we're trying to preserve what we think is right, and there's a push to get this out there. And so, if we pass House Bill 191, at least that's an idea for a floor amendment, that if they're going to remove it from the video, it needs to be removed as well. So that would have fixed that issue for those particular books. But the other thing is that we had a lot of parents that reached out to us on this issue, but we need them to go engage. We need you to engage and get the books and start the process of SB 5 so that some of these things can be cleaned up and taken care of. But it is a process. Some of it is federal. I know a few states have worked through it, and Miranda Stovall was working on that process for me. We were intending to work on it in the interim and then have something to file beginning of next year.
I'm following up on the school thing that Bobby Alexander got going here. I do know that some states, if it's federal, I would think it would be across the whole country. Several states have managed to remove ADL from their, system, so I don't know how that works. But the question I had is, when there was I can't remember the day of the event at Frankfurt, but it's the one you were talking about. They were up there shouting down, and all these students from Jefferson County were there. They were allowed to have the day off. There were Jefferson County buses that took them there. So those are taxpayer-funded buses, and I know not every dollar comes out of Jefferson County for those buses. They're statewide. It's a statewide fund. So was there ever anything done that would prevent that? Let a conservative county try that and see the uproar.
So I questioned the same thing you did. I said, how can the taxpayers' dollars come up here and bring busloads of children to advocate for 150 is what they were coming up for. And so, the responses I was getting was, well, if we put something in place to advocate against this, then they can't come up on a legislative day, or then it restricts the kids from allowing them to be aware and involved in the process. So we can't pick and choose, if we're gonna have the Capitol be open, it's gotta be open on a certain. So that would include field trips to the Capitol, that they bring buses up all the time for students to come to field trip to meet with representatives and see the process. So we need to be real careful about, going into one area and really focusing, because it can hinder the learning process of the student. Did I agree with it? No. But I also recognize that we want people in the process. We want to teach our kids about the legislative process and how laws are passed, so they can be more involved. Involvement is very much key. And I appreciate your question, that it wasn't your question, a couple of your questions reminded me of a professor I had in college once. I said, hey, how many questions is going to be the final exam? And he said, one question. I was like, all right, one question on the final exam. And then I got the test that said, question number 1, A, B, C, D.
I'm just going to add to that a little bit and just talk about it from a philosophical perspective. Okay, so let's just say that we passed legislation. This is not what you asked, but it's kind of what some of the questions have been about. Let's just say that we passed legislation that says that we can't, CRT or DEI cannot be taught in schools. The issue is that it doesn't really matter what acronym you use. The issue is the philosophy or the what is being taught in the school. Because we could say CRT, DEI is no longer, to be taught in the schools. But it goes back to the point, the people that want to teach it are going to change the acronym.
Yes.
They're going to change the approach. So you can't really prohibit those particular acronyms. We have to work on the societal issues. It goes back to DEI and CRT has been an initiative that's been passed and pushed in our schools for how many years? Probably longer than we've ever known. Yeah, it's decades, 30 years. So for us to think that we're going to come in here and overnight just change the society and the rules of society and what's acceptable in society, we're just not going to be able to do that. So what we have to do is, it goes back to Josh's point earlier about we have to protect the minds of our children. And so now, but from a community perspective, it's from a church perspective, it's from a family perspective, making sure that you have those hard conversations with your grandchildren and children, making sure that they understand, the principles that our nation was founded on and that could, and whatever beliefs that you want to instill in them to make sure that that's not the counter conversation doesn't occur at school or in other community involvement. So we've got a long ways to go to reel that back in. And so I encourage you all to continue to be involved and to continue to have those conversations. It's kind of hard now for people my age to go into the school and to impact people that are 16 years old and younger, because they just look at us and they think that, like I'm an old fogey, right? Yeah, right. Do you have a TikTok account? Do you know the jargon? And if I use the jargon, then I look ridiculous because I'm, too old to be hip. So I think it's a hard challenge that we have. And in some regards, I feel like that we've lost an entire generation, and we're just going to have to work really, really, really hard to start that evolution back to, back to where we want those conservative Christian principles to be. So don't give up, just talk harder and, more and more and more and to be more determined. And if you have to, take away the checkbook, right?
Yeah, I'll add to that is that what we did do, we filed open records request and we exposed it. And if we ever stop talking about it in public, it becomes accepted. And so a lot of what we're doing is we are exposing it. We have to keep exposing it. And as good people step up and get in places of position, and as you all participate in the process, we see those changes take place. You look at what happened in 4 years, and then look what's happened the last 3. I never dreamed we could have been where we were as a country in the 4 years pre-Biden, and then look at what's happened the last 3 years. So it's a process, but if we do the right thing day in and day out, keep exposing it. I talk about kids all the time. The reason why is I don't want anybody to forget they're being exposed to filth. I don't want anybody to forget that they're being trafficked right here in our communities under our noses and we don't even know about it, that they're being baited on social media. Just keep exposing the issues and keep it out there. And it is grueling sometimes. It feels like you're getting nowhere. But Noah probably felt the exact same way, but he got his family on the ark.
I have a few questions. First,
Just have one, A, B, C.
House Bill 497 is a bill on requiring homeschooling and private schools to have diplomas to teach their children. Although I kind of understand the general idea of that, but as a homeschooling mom, you don't even need, I'm teaching my children Latin, and I don't speak Latin. I don't have have to know Latin because the curriculum that I'm using is teaching the Latin. So I don't need to have, 65 degrees in chemistry and physics and Latin or whatever I'm teaching them, because the curriculum that you purchase to teach them teaches them. So I think that puts a little restriction on homeschoolers, especially, and private schools. The other thing is, if you don't, like, say you don't have a high school education, but you're in the lower income area, and you know your kids are gonna go to a crappy school, and you can buy this really good curriculum and teach them at home without having a high school diploma, why would that be a bad thing? Especially when scores nationwide show homeschoolers score on average 30% higher than public school kids. So I would say, can we just not have that? Not have that bill? Like, not support that bill?
Yeah, I'll be glad I'll talk to that. I'm gonna give a couple disclaimers, all right? My first disclaimer is the words I'm fixing to speak are Josh Calloway only opinion, okay? The second disclaimer that I want to lay out there is that there are great teachers and great schools in the public government system in the state of Kentucky. There definitely are. Rural communities, a lot of them are blessed more than what some of the more urban communities are. My children all homeschooled or were in private school. And so when I speak to this, people think that it's an either or, and it's not. It's a both and. It takes both. Our public schools are going to educate the majority of our kids, so they've got to be as good as they can possibly be. So I wanted to lay that disclaimer out. This is the thing, and this is my argument. I read an email, I think, from you and from another homeschool mom. And this is the argument that we hear. We hear from rural superintendents and principals that deal with parents that homeschool their children, and they're not responsible. So they take them to Walmart all day. They get calls once a week about them playing in the yard. Aren't they supposed to be in school? And people engage in that. And so it provides a mindset to them that homeschool's bad, government school's good with the government eyes upon them. This is the thing that I want to say is, the government schools are supposedly the accountable schools. Our governor says this all the time. We should be giving public dollars to unaccountable schools and unaccountable organizations. Well, look where the accountability has got us. Look at the scores. Look at what is going on. If that is accountability, and then they just throw more money at it. And so what we're trying to do is yes, we're trying to make sure it's provided for, and we're also passing numeracy bills and working on trying to get our literacy up, because those are the foundational pieces. And when DEI is the highest paid position in KDE and not the person that's trying to promote math and English, we have a problem. And so this is where accountability comes. Accountability will fully come when a parent can vote with their feet and with their money. And so whenever we can walk in and say, my child's not learning, I'm going to put them over here where they can learn, that is the best accountability that can possibly be had. And so what my argument against this bill is, we got all the accountability in the world, and look what it's produced. I'm going to always vote on the side of the parent and give them the accountability for their child. And so I promise you this, that I will actively work to make sure that this type of legislation doesn't move forward. This is me personally, back to my disclaimers that I started with.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm going to speak from something that I hear Senator Vaneen say all the time, that we cannot make the front room teacher the bad person. And nothing that you all have talked about in this room has suggested that. So the front room teacher, the teacher that's in the classroom is not the bad person.
But I also want to say too, that one of the things that we've done is we are constantly analyzing, because of the SEEK money, how many students are enrolled in public education in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And in the last 2 years, we've lost 28,000 students. And that's because obviously some people have moved in and out of the state, but a lot of people are choosing private and homeschooling. And so again, we've said numerous times that parents have to be involved. That's a great way for parents to be involved. And I know that that's not an option for everybody, because in some cases, we don't even have an alternative. It goes back again to the parental involvement to make sure that, as Josh said, to make sure that your child is getting to be the advocate for your child, to make sure that your child is getting the education that they need, the resources that they need, and to hold our school boards accountable. You know, if you go back and look at like Jefferson County, a lot of the numbers that we talked about, if you take Jefferson County out of the equation, then our numbers would increase dramatically. Absolutely. And so you look at one of the situations that was just in the news either this week or last week, and there was one particular school, and I think it was Stewart, where the grades were actually modified. They were rounded up. And so, but whenever the numbers came back from the, where they were doing their testing, the nationwide testing, the standardized testing, then I think like 35% or 30% of the kids were reading on grade level, proficient. And so that was proficient for math, you know, reading, writing, and arithmetic. So to me, that is absolutely a travesty when we have 70% of our students in any school that are not proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's a travesty. And so, you know, from my perspective, there's not a whole lot that I can do as a parent or even as a legislator with what's going on in Jefferson County. But we can do things like try to have the school choice, and we can try to do as many things, you know, but still, that's one of the largest school systems in the nation. And it's absolutely failing. So, you know, we'll do as much as we can to help those individuals, those families, but those families are gonna have to do some things for themselves. I was just reading a very interesting article that talked about, you know, we know who our superintendent is. I know who our superintendent is for Meade County, Breckinridge County, Hardin County, and they know us on a first name basis. The people in Jefferson County are gonna have to communicate that they're dissatisfied with what's happening. They're just gonna have to.
They did.
They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to, and you're gonna have to continue. And it's gonna have to be a loud and a vocal and a continuous disagreement with that, a dissatisfaction.
And they still closed down 2 schools in our neighborhood.
And that's the worst part. And that's the worst part is the community schools are so very important. They're very important for the individual, they're very important for the community, they're very important for those, you know, the entire family.
One school was closed and sold to LG&E. Second school, the elementary school that had been there since the village was built in 1953 by the VA for military families. They closed that school, the city has taken it over, and they're going to make it a living facility.
Yeah, and
They closed down their good schools.
right, and the Supreme Court has already said twice that our busing system is unconstitutional, illegal, and that we can't do it. So we'll continue some of these conversations that we talked about today with the veterinarian school, you know, some of these things that these are 40 and 50 and 75-year-old conversations. And so I'm not making excuses, but we'll continue to have these conversations for a while longer. And we'll do as many things as we possibly can. But, you know, it's very, very, very important for you to make sure, for us to make sure that we know who our attorneys are. You know, who's going to be on the ballot in the upcoming election for our Supreme Court justices. So it's very important for us to make sure that we support those individuals that share our beliefs. And I don't, you know, our Kentucky Supreme Court, we're probably on the brink of losing
we've already lost one conservative justice, and potentially that person won't be replaced.
I have question one, part B. Part B. Going back to the school again, with school choice, homeschoolers, why is it that all of us that own property have to pay property taxes, those taxes pay for the schools, but homeschoolers cannot use like sports at the public school? I have an avid soccer player, he's amazing, and every year we battle, should we deal with public school because of the soccer, or do we just keep having to pay out of pocket? The other thing with homeschoolers is we have a 529, but we can't use it because there's a federal law that says you can't use your 529 for homeschooling. But those are the people that would need that the most. Why can't we use, if we're paying for the school, why can't we use certain services like music class and just show up for music class, or the sports and just show up for sports?
So this bill that we just got done discussing is in response to that very issue. So we've had this discussion multiple times. Representative Ryan Dodson has a bill that's filed right now that we've been working through the process on. And this is what it's come down to a lot, has been around liability. And there's been some questions and concern as to whether a waiver is actually sufficient for liability. And so there was discussion about, let's just make it to where you can play in sports, but you have to take one class, and you can even do a remote class or something of that sort. And I'm under the belief that we're paying the taxes, that we should be able to be engaged and involved. We're working through that now, and I think it really comes down to liability. And that has been the dividing factor. We discussed it just this past week in a meeting, and had the stakeholders at the table. And that bill that we just discussed came as a result of that, because that came up in some of the conversations. So you have a kid that's failing in school, and so they play football, and then you take them out of school and go homeschool them so you can say whatever you want their grades to be so they can continue to play football and do it from homeschool. And so there's been a lot of different things that have come out of these discussions, and I think we'll continue to see it move forward. I think if we brought a bill to the floor today in the House, it would pass. I think we just have to get these liability issues figured out, and we'll see that move forward. But I do agree with you on that issue.
One of the things that I had the same conversation with the chair of the Education Committee in the House, James Allen Tipton, and he's excellent at this position. One of the things that he talked about is that 80% of the school districts use the same insurance companies for this liability. And so my point was, well, maybe we need to investigate another insurance company and to use one that is interested in allowing this activity to occur. So maybe, we can look at the law and change the law, but at the same time, maybe we need to look at a different insurance company.
I have a question. Nancy, in your opening statement, you talked about the budget and each line item and all that. My question to you is there an audit of the spending? And if so, how is that done, and where is that? Where can we find the results of that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. The auditor, Mike Harmon, did a fabulous job. He was very involved in investigating where the money's being spent, how the money's being used, whether or not it's being spent appropriately. Allison Ball is going to be an even better auditor. One of the reasons why I say that is because she's been the treasurer, so she's been spending the money, and now she can go back and actually audit that. One thing that has been interesting is that in the 8 years that Mike Harmon, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 8 years that Mike Harmon was the auditor for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, he did not financially audit the Jefferson County School Board. Right? I think I've looked this up. He has not. And so that will be hopefully one of the things that Allison Ball is willing to look into in addition to some of the other things that Auditor Harmon didn't get to. So it's one of those, it's just like this huge effort. And even though he had 8 years, he was working on some really important issues. And, so this will be another one that's taken on, hopefully.
Just a couple of notes. A lot of the bills that we pass on education are because of Jefferson and Fayette County.
That's right.
And so it's like we're passing these laws that are they're across the state, but unfortunately 2 areas are kind of the ones that are reasons why they came up. And the other thing is the seat money. This year, COVID, you didn't have to have a person in a seat to get the seat money for schools. Well, this year, if that student is not in school, the school doesn't get the money. So what's happening is, Nancy mentioned, we had 28,000 students not going to public schools anymore. So that means that's 28,000, those seat dollars for 28,000 people are not going to go to the school. So even though the seat money is there and increased, it increased the amount of money per person that they're getting, but it may not have increased because they had less people or less students enrolled in their schools. So one of the other options is some of these underperforming schools. We have some schools that have 700 students, and right in the same county, you've got a school that has 1,000 students, and the one with that 1,000 students or 1,200 students is doing really good, but the one with 700 is not doing good at all. Maybe they need to think about merging them. So another thing is that the homeschool. Well, we just passed a bill out of the House that allows substitute teachers now just have to have a high school diploma. So you don't even have to have 60 hours or any college. You just have to have a high school diploma, and you can be a substitute teacher. So just because that they need more teachers to sub when these teachers are out, they need more people. And then the homeschool piece. So you have homeschool, and I agree with you. I've looked at the data about how homeschools are very successfar, but you do have some bad apples out there. You have people that will pull their kid out of school. They're getting ready to go to a truancy charge because they're not in school. And they're like, oh, I'm homeschooling my student, and they homeschool them. They homeschool for a year supposedly, and they come back to the public school system the next year, and they're behind in reading, they're behind in math, behind all these. So even though you are doing a great job of homeschooling, and about 80 or 85% or 90% are doing it, you have some of those that are not. And we have to make sure that we can, the purpose is to make sure every child in this state gets an education, has opportunities. So when you have some of those areas where people are not doing what they need to be doing with homeschool, somehow we've got to manage that. And unfortunately, it might have some more areas where you have to meet the requirements. You have to check the box that you meet the requirements. So, and then, like I said, just Jefferson County, we even talked about splitting Jefferson County up from a state standpoint. So Jefferson County's still busing, so sometimes when parents want to be involved in school, they get off work at 5, they can't drive an hour across town to be at a school event for their child, and then drive an hour back home. So it's kind of ridiculous, but if you split the school system up, think about how that would happen, because if you have one area that is predominantly a more wealthier area, then that school system gets a lot more money than an area that may not be. So then now this school system doesn't get as much money. So how are you going to make it a level playing ground to where everybody's getting, the same amount of money and has the same opportunity to progress from an education standpoint? So
I think that's a very important question, because I was just involved in a debate with several of our legislators that are from Eastern Kentucky. And, if you think about Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky, because of the tornadoes and the cost of the water, the flooding that they had, they've lost a lot of their homes and they've lost a lot of their businesses. So because of that, then they are, that 3% that's on your utility taxes, they're losing because the population as a whole is moving toward the center of Kentucky. So they're losing money every single year. And the 28,000 students that we've lost, a large portion of those are in the Eastern and Western Kentuckys. Because people are going to move where they have jobs and where they have homes, perfect sense. So they were talking about how some of their teachers, even though we've used the SEEK dollars and we try to base the money based upon population, some of their teachers are making $30,000 a year. And so, of course, teachers, again, are gonna move to where there's the economic value for their families. They're gonna make those economic decisions. We've got teachers that are moving from teaching in Meade County, and they're moving to Jefferson County and Hardin County just because, they can make more money the last 3 years of their employment to add to their retirement. So somehow we have to figure out how to actually make sure that we do encourage quality education for the students that are in Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky, in addition to Jefferson County. So we're trying to figure that out. The Supreme Court, the Kentucky Supreme Court has said that the SEEK dollars, or have encouraged us to use those SEEK dollars, and I agree with that, but that doesn't mean that maybe we shouldn't be a little more creative. So we'll continue to look at that and to study those concerns, because they are important.
Are state-funded retirement funds and accounts, are they in balance now and maybe for the next 10 years, or are they still in the red?
Oh, we still have a significant issue with that. I think and this is kind of a moving target, right? I think 6 years ago, whenever I was elected, we were using the statistic that we're $60 billion with unfunded liability. So now we're kind of using that moving target of $45 billion worth of unfunded liability. We're still turning over the rocks and trying to figure out what are the issues with that. One of the concerns that we have is that Senator Deneen, is it Senate Bill 2 or Senate Bill 4 that would change the calculation for the sick days for the teachers? Senate Bill 4?
No, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's Senate Bill 4.
No, that's 6, I think.
Okay. Well, it's a highly debated, I think it's 4, but anyway, it's a highly debated topic. And one of the topics is that, I think I'll get my numbers right. 2 years ago, we spent $350 million in order to pay off the sick days that have been accumulated for the teachers' TRS. So what we've done, though, is we have determined that teachers can, and I'm not saying that anybody's bad or good or anything, but they're just taking advantage of an opportunity. And what they're doing is they're banking their sick days. And so we have determined that that's adding to the unfunded liability of $52 million a year. And so where we're trying to stop the bleeding, then that's one of the areas where there's constantly bleeding. So the recommendation is for us to stop that bleeding. Anyone who's an employee as of June 1st, 2024, or something like that, then from that day forward, they can only bank 10 sick days a year. But what I'm trying to say is that in a roundabout way, the teacher's retirement is 60% funded. The KRS, the Kentucky State Police, whenever I first was elected, it was 13% funded. It's nearly 30% funded now. So we're working on those issues as quickly as we can, adding $500 million in excess of the statutory requirement. But it's still just going to be a huge endeavor that we're just going to have to continue to work at chipping away. And the unfortunate piece is when we have $45 billion worth of unfunded liability, that's a yoke around every one of our necks. And it's going to prevent us from actually doing more productive and more quality things that we could potentially do with that money. But, our commitment as a state is to continue to fund those retirement plans. And you have the commitment, I believe, from everybody, all the legislators in this room to continue to do that. Whether we want to or not, it's our obligation to do that. And we'll continue to be fiscally responsible and to take care of that as diligently and as quickly as possible. But we have to make sure that we do stop the bleeding. And I know that that's been a hard topic of conversation for a lot of people.
One of the biggest things that's been happening in Hardin County for the last few years is Blue Oval. I'm sure you've all heard of Blue Oval many times. I did not find, nor can I remember the exact amount of the incentive that the state gave to Blue Oval. But my question is, who did, and by the way, that was based, I think, to some degree on a promise of 5,000 jobs for Hardin County. Well, there's been a lot of discrepancies and discussion and rumors about, well, maybe it'll be 2,500, it might even be down to 1,000. But anyway, who decides how much a tax incentive is given to a corporation or a company like Blue Oval. And if it's based on, is that amount given based upon what that factory or that company is going to produce? Is that all tied together? Well, we're gonna give you 15 million if you produce 5,000 jobs. So if they don't produce 5,000 jobs, is that tax incentive gonna be reduced accordingly, or do they still get the same amount of tax incentive? Because I think if they don't bring it to us, then we shouldn't give it to them.
Yeah.
That's my viewpoint, but I'd ask your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
Thank
so I'll start out with this, and I'm sure you all can add to this. So, the Department of Economic Development actually negotiates conversations. That obviously is part of the executive branch, the Department of Economic Development. And so I will say that the Blue Oval decision and that incentive was a combination of the executive branch, the governor, and obviously that incentive had to be approved by the legislative branch. We can't remember if it was 250 million. It was two different pieces, but it was a significant chunk of change. So I can just give you from my experience, you know, I worked with UPS for 33 years. And one of the things that we had to do was when there were incentives that were given to us financially by Kentucky and by the federal government, we absolutely had to meet those incentives. And not only did we do that, but now we have 22,000 people that work for UPS in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In addition to that, we served, you know, whenever I first started with UPS, I'm just going to give you an example, but we served two countries, the United States and Germany. Now we serve 177 countries and territories. I'll go flip from that over to my experience with Nucor in Brandenburg. One of our responsibilities and commitments as a state and as a corporation was for there to be 400 new employees, and then equal to that, if not more, for corporations that would support Nucor. The other commitment that Nucor had, which they've met that in both regards, the other part that they had to do was they had to 30% of the blue collar workers and 30% of the white collar workers would come from out of state. And that's because the corporation wanted to bring their philosophies in. But 70% of the blue collar and the white collar had to come from local within our district. They've absolutely done that. So my point is that those incentives, while we might not take away from them, that will certainly influence whether they get any incentives in the future. And so we'll see from a Blue Oval perspective. I think the jury's still out as to what actually is going to happen. Maybe things aren't as quick as they wanted them to be. You know, like where Nucor wanted to open up within 2 years, COVID happened. You know, the floods happened. You know, we had lots of rain. So there were things that impacted their timeline, but ultimately they met their obligation. And I can say from a UPS perspective, we did the same thing. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the same thing is going to happen with Blue Oval. Maybe not necessarily in the timeline, but it'll eventually happen. Anybody else want to add to that?
No, I'd just say that the answer to the question is yes. There is requirements in there that they have to meet, and there's penalties for not meeting those requirements, and then we manage that as a legislature. It's you all's money that we're investing, so.
Yeah, that's right. And ultimately, I think that they'll meet those requirements.
So if you look at when they gave an investment for Nucor, they've exceeded what they said they would do by about 20% now. So they have even 20% more than what they anticipated. If you look at the Blue Oval site, it's got how it affects everything. It affects your schools, the seat money that the schools are getting. It affects all the training that they gave them, an economic package of training to train people that are going to be working there, and that money goes to ECTC. So the money that they gave for an economic package to train their employees is if you go through ECTC, then that's how you get trained. So they're already utilizing things that are in place. And then if they do calculations of what's the economic benefit in the long run, and we end up coming out ahead by doing that. I mean, you look at Toyota and the economic impact, and they continue to grow and grow and grow. It's been huge for the state. So we just need to make sure we're doing it right. We're sustainability, growth, and strategic. We're not just planting stuff. We have a plan. We're building things. We're changing roads around. Instead of changing a road here, then we're tearing it up 3 years later and changing another road. For strategic growth in the future, we need to be sustainable, and we need to be aware of how it's going to affect us in the future.
We got 2 more questions up in the front row, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you. I'll try to make this quick, but it could be a lengthy topic. I'm a local business owner. I'm a pharmacy here in Vine Grove, and the legislature over the years has been very supportive of us. I really appreciate it. I've been a pharmacist a long time. I've been in business 26 years. I've never seen a more challenging business environment. And I know you're aware of it, not just for pharmacy, but independent business in general. One of the challenges we have is just the workforce. And a lot of what you're talking about, education and other things, is part of that. But I don't know where all the workers have gone. We have a shortage of technicians, pharmacists. One of my friends is a veterinary, so it's good that you're opening a veterinary school because she can't find a veterinary partner. My wife is with me here. She's a nurse. There's a shortage of nurses. I guess I would like you to comment on that. Where has the workforce gone? With that comes inflation and increases in wages. And the best I can explain it, the way a pharmacy business is set up in retail, our structure cannot support that. That's why we need y'all to pass SB 188. Will hopefully help that. We're one of the few businesses that can't control our prices. So if I buy medication at a certain price, I'm dependent on the government or the insurance company really sets the reimbursement. I have no control over that. The other thing I would like to say, I really appreciate y'all balancing the budget. Back in the day, when June came around, they wouldn't have enough money to pay pharmacy, and we would actually have to wait another month for our funding. And our cash flow is really, really tight right now. And this really affects everybody. We're here for our communities. We're here for our employees. We're here for our patients. And it is just not about pharmacists. And I really think, here's an example of we have an independent pharmacy here in Vine Grove, Kentucky. I guess the last thing to touch on, without getting too lengthy, is this medicinal marijuana bill. Are we going to go down the road that Kentucky has done so many times where we're not going to do a lottery, we're not going to do gambling, we're not going to have a casino, and then they finally say, every other state's doing it, so we're going to do it. Do you think it's inevitable? And I would say pharmacists have enough trouble helping control the opioid crisis. I don't think many pharmacists would be for, I've heard, maybe being in charge of that, even if it is medicinal. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Any comments you have would be appreciated.
Well, that's a really encompassing question. I think you went through ABC through Z.
Yeah.
But number one is get rid of PBMs. No, PBMs are destroying the cost of your medication. There's a bill out there, that's the same bill you just mentioned, and it basically, the PBMs are controlled a lot of the federal government, and we have a little bit, and I think we're going to exercise the amount of control we have on that 188. And there's not one legislator I've talked to on either side of the aisle that is for keeping PBMs. And it is ridiculous what they're putting the independent pharmacies out of business, and it's creating a monopoly. Monopoly is what it is, and that's not good for anybody. So that's the number one piece. I support that bill. I will do everything I can to get it through. And the other piece, you mentioned nurses. I'm very aware of the nurse shortage, and it amazes me that we should not have a nurse shortage. We have 16 community colleges in this state, and every one of them teach nursing. And what I've realized is that I asked, I was at U of L, their board the other day, and I was like, what are y'all doing on the nursing shortage? Well, we teach a nursing program. Are you doing night classes? Are you doing weekend classes? Are you doing these? Well, no, we just have a nursing. And then I noticed the requirements to get in nursing is even harder. Why do you need college algebra to get into nursing? So Galen doesn't allow it, and Galen is exploding, charging 2 to 3 times as much as our state university. Why are our state universities not taking the business model that Galen has and trying to expand and get more nurses? And talking with the Board of Nursing is like, we don't have any requirements for a person to get into nursing school. Our requirements are you pass the nursing test and you become a nurse. So it doesn't matter what you come in as, it's what you're ending up as. So we put a lot of what I call barriers on these programs, and especially some of the community colleges and other colleges. You got to jump through this hoop, you got to pass this class, you got to be in class from this day to this week, and they're not being flexible with this new workforce that we've got that loves flexibility. So those are some of the reasons, some of the things I answered. Touch on some of those. I just want to make sure they get time.
Yeah, I think the, another part, as Steve said, you asked questions A through Z within that. So one of the things that is all of our concern is that 44% of our able-bodied adults aren't working. And when I say that able-bodied adults, that means from age 18 to 50. And so that's not like a parent who wants to stay at home with their child. That's able-bodied adults who could work that aren't working. And so we're constantly trying to figure out how to make sure that we have benefits that are available to people who actually need them, but that we remove those benefits for people who need to get to work. But the problem is that whenever you ask people, where are those people at? I've looked at the data for that, and I'm gonna tell you, it's so complicated, and I'm a data analysis, and I'm going, oh my gosh, you'd have to be have a lot of time in order to analyze that data. And I think ultimately you're gonna go down to the point where those people are spread out everywhere. Part of the issue with that is that whenever the governor did the Medicaid expansion, you go from 900,000 people that were on Medicaid, where you made it to where additional 500,000 were on Medicaid. And basically the only criteria was that you had to be not working, right? I think that's what the expansion was. And so there's incentives, obviously, that you all are all aware of for people to not be working. The other point is that there's, and I'm not real sure that it's the people that aren't working. I think some of them are self-employed, but they're just not reporting that they're working and that they're collecting money, they're generating money and not paying taxes. So I think that there's just I would encourage every one of you all, if you know someone who's not working, to encourage them to get to work. And sometimes it's, I said, I'm an old fogey, I know, but part of that is that working actually gives us the dignity, a lot of the dignity and respect for ourselves that we have. And there's, some people think that work is a bad word, but work is actually a good word. It's good. There's so many things that we get from that employment. And so to encourage people to do that work and to start out doing menial tasks, and to start out doing things that we're not making $20 and $50 an hour, where we are making the $10 an hour or less, where we are, and through those experiences we learn a lot. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I think that's part of what our responsibility is as the mature generation, the older generation, to encourage the workforce. One more thing.
So I was looking at some data real quick. The amount of people that are going into the workforce from 18 to 24 is at a 1% rate. The amount of people that are going into the workforce at a 5% rate are people over 55. So the people that should be retiring and going to work, and the people that should be working are not working.
Daniel picked up that 30-second sign, and he acted like he was just looking at it, but he was flipping it like this. So I'll just say this real quick. We passed a bill this past week that put us in line with the federal regulations that allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to actually be able to work more. So we got to get it in their blood while they're young. Y'all just saw my boy when he was 13 and he was crying, and my wife puts him out the door in the summer to go to his summer job with my brother and build houses, and closes the door and waves at him while he's crying. But you can't keep him from work today. It's in his blood. And so we have to do that. And I want to say this too, we can't forget from a medical standpoint, we can't ever forget that our governor required people to have, nurses to have medical procedures, and if you wanted to take it, absolutely, that's your right. But he ran nurses out of this state and brought in, hired people, paid them a whole lot more money to do the job that some of these nurses were doing. That was absolutely wrong. We should have never done that. Some of us tried to fight against it, and you know, we didn't win that battle, but we're still suffering from that.
I understand the last question, but I want to thank y'all for being here, even though that's not my job to say that. I really appreciate y'all being here and doing this with us. And this is a question I don't even know if you can answer, but we've been talking about, you know, people working, and I'm just wondering if you all happen to know whether the corporations in this state are hiring illegal aliens, and if they're taxed, if they don't have social security numbers, and are they collecting taxes on them? And because I know Amazon right now, they don't even speak English there anymore. They have interpreters. And I don't know about other companies or UPS or anything like that. But we need revenue for the state, and we need to make sure that if they're going to do it, we need to at least be giving their money.
Yes, some of them are, and I know that for a fact, because we have illegals that have fake papers. I've dealt with a situation just in the past 3 weeks of an individual that came from Texas with papers, went to file his taxes, thought they were legitimate, that came from an organization in Texas that is set up by the border to get them IDs and get them tax numbers that are not legitimate. So it's happening. We have to dig into it. I've started a process of looking at some of that. I don't even know how to start with the audit process. But it is happening, and he can't file his taxes, and now he's scared to death because he's an illegal alien in Kentucky and trying to figure out what to do with his family and figure it out. They don't want to work with him. They want him to go back across the border, and so it's an absolute mess. And if that's happening in Breckinridge County, it's happening everywhere.
I have just a quick statement. We talked about election integrity and some of the election processes earlier. Alabama, was raised in Alabama. I go there often. I keep up with some of the things that happen there politically. One of the things the Alabama government did was got rid of the ERIC system and developed their own electronic system. It seems to be working for them really well. They're very happy with it. Maybe we could use Alabama's, at least look at Alabama's process and learn something from it to bring it up here. Thank you so much for being here.
Again, I just want to thank all of you all for being here as well. You know, it's a beautiful day, and even though it's cold, and that would be the deterrent for not coming out too as well. But your participation and your involvement, I sincerely appreciate, and I think I can speak on the behalf of Josh and Steve as well. So it's an honor for you to be here, and an honor to support the Commonwealth of Kentucky and to support you all. So thank you very much.
So, I want to put out, we want to thank you guys for coming here. Remind everybody to get out and vote on May 21st. Also, if you live in the West Point or Northern Radcliffe, there is a special election, March 19th, and the Republican candidate is Peyton Griffey. Get out and vote for that election. Our WFF event will be on Monday with General Flynn. He's coming to Kentucky. Our GOP meetings, second Monday of the month, 6 p.m. at ECTC. We'd love to have you. County Mass meeting is March 11th. That's where we select our delegates. I want to let Josh Calloway know that Hardin County and Breckinridge County has personally endorsed you because we see the difference. We normally don't endorse during a primary, but we see the difference between both candidates, and this is our future and our children's and our grandchildren's. So the importance of this endorsement was to make sure we got a good candidate. So we appreciate that. Lincoln dinner for Hardin County is March 16th. Come hear them all again. They'll get a chance to talk again. Thank you, guys. Does somebody want to close with a quick prayer?
Father, we thank you for a very informative afternoon. We pray for these legislators that you will give them wisdom and guidance and also the diligence to perform their duties. We thank you and ask you to bless them and their families for the sacrifice that they are giving. Lord, we ask you to watch over us as we travel home. Give us all traveling mercies. And we thank you for all your many blessings and for living in a wonderful country. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
I'm so sorry we went over. Oh, no, that's fine. I think I said it on, so I'm going to show you.